Let's get straight to it. 2012 Honda Accord. This is the 2.4 liter engine. All right, so the customer brought this car in and said that they're having a misfire from the cylinder number 2 and cylinder number 3. So I checked the codes and found that they had a P0 302, which is a cylinder 2 misfire, P0 303, which is a cylinder 3 misfire. The reason you know is the 03 is for the number 2, 03 is for the number 3, and 01 would be for number 1, and of course 04 would be for number 4. If there was a 5th cylinder, then that would be 05. So that's how you know which cylinders are misfiring. P0302, P0303. And there's also another code, a P0300, which is for a random multiple misfire. Now, I already know what the problem is because I'm doing this video after. So basically, I'm going to tell you what I did before I found out the solution. So when you have misfires, the first thing that you always look to is the ignition coil and the spark plug. So without having to spend any money or any of this customer's money, I took a little bit of time and did some diagnosing. So the first thing I did was, because I know that these 2 cylinders are the ones that are misfiring, I moved the ignition coil from this cylinder to this cylinder, and the ignition coil from the 2 to the 4, and just to see, that didn't take any time, and I found that the cylinders 2 and 3 were still misfiring. Now what that does is it isolates the cylinders. So since the parts that I thought were bad are over here now, then this cylinder should misfire and this cylinder should misfire. But since these 2 cylinders are still misfiring, that's telling me that the parts that I moved were still good. So pretty much all of our ignition coils are good. Otherwise, these 2 would be misfiring. The second thing that I do is I would start to change the spark plugs. Because this is a 4-cylinder, it's real easy to do. I'll do that. If this was like a 8-cylinder or something, you know, with the spark plugs in the back hard to get to, where you got to move you know, intakes, then I probably wouldn't have to go through all that. But since it's so easy to do, so I took the spark plugs out of these 2 cylinders and did the same as that thing. I put them over here, and the one from the 2 I put, and the one from the 3 I put at the 4. And I started the vehicle, read the codes again, and still it was these 2 cylinders that was misfiring. So basically that told me that our spark plugs were also good. So the next thing I went to, because this fuel rail is so easy to move, I did the same exact thing. I moved the fuel injector number 2 to number 1 and the number 3 to the number 4. And reset the code, started the engine, same thing. I was still getting cylinder 2 and 3 misfire. Now, usually when I have multiple cylinder misfire, it's very, very rare for it to be a compression problem. It's very, very rare in any vehicle for you to have more than one cylinder lose compression at the same time. Usually if you lose compression, it's for one cylinder. So the fact that we have 2 cylinders misfiring is telling me that it's not a compression problem. But I did the compression test anyways because it's so easy, and I got good compression out of these 2 cylinders. On most cars, you can point to a CPU relearn, like an ECU relearn, PCM relearn, something like that. But since I already know from doing research on this vehicle, when you have, when I've seen other people have those 2 cylinders, the 2 and the 3 misfiring, and the P0300, it always seemed to be just a relearn process for the crank position sensor. So the reason why I'm not changing the crank sensor is because So far, I'm not getting any codes saying the crank sensor is bad. So usually you would, if the crank sensor needed to be changed, you would get a code for the crank sensor as well. So in this case, I'm thinking the crank sensor just needs to be reprogrammed. Now I have this expensive $600 Autel scan tool, and it does not work for this car to clear or reset or reprogram the crank sensor. And that actually has me pretty pissed, because I thought paying that much money and having that, I'll be able to do most things. So what I actually had to do was order a different one, a Foxwell NT510. And I'm getting ready to show you that right now. So I had to get this scan tool here from Foxwell. This is the NT510, and this is for Honda specifically, well, mostly. This is the cheapest scan tool I can find that can reset the crank sensor, and this was about $150, $160 from Amazon. Right now I'm letting the car warm up. You can see the check engine light still blinking because it has the P0302 and P0303, which is the cylinder 2 and 3 misfire, and it has a P0300, which is the multiple cylinder misfire. So that's the main reason why I think that it's the relearn process for the crank sensor that needs to be done. I've seen that in a couple of other videos, and it's just too much of a coincidence for this to not be the same problem. So I have the vehicle warming up right now. You can see it's still cold. I just started up. So once it gets warmed up a little bit, I'll go ahead and try to start this process. All right, so check engine light is on. It was flashing earlier. Sometimes it flashes, sometimes it doesn't, but we definitely still have the problem. So gonna click on Honda. I wish it was touchscreen, that would be neat. Then smart VIN, you can enter yours manual, but if you have a Honda, it normally picks up the VIN really good. And this is the destination, not the make of the car or where it's from. This is where you're located, so this can be confusing. All right, so this is the vehicle. Double check. Of course, this is our 2012. So we're gonna hit OK. It's F3. So from here, we're going to go to control modules. That's number 2. And engine control system. So keep this in mind. That's number 1, engine control system. Let that load up. Okay, then number 7, special functions. Let that load up. Once that loads up, this is what you see. You want to click on number 1, crank pattern relearn, CKP. It's F3 for enter. Okay, so there's 2 options here. You have the clear and relearn. So before we do the relearn, we want to do the clear. And our engine is warm and everything. So let's do the pattern clear. This clear command erases only CKP pattern data stored in ECM PCM. Use this clear command after repairing a misfire or replacing the crank sensor. Afterward, do the crank pattern relearn procedure to write the new crank pattern into the ECM PCM. Do you wish to continue? F3 for yes. All right, so it says to turn the engine switch off and leave it on. So we're going to turn it off. Okay, so it's on. And it says press enter to clear the crank pattern. All right, it says to start the engine. Okay, so it wanted me to turn the engine off and on twice. So it said to turn off the engine. I turned it off. Then it said to turn it on. I turned it back on. And now we're waiting. This is my first time actually doing this too, so learning as I go. So the crank pattern has been cleared. Okay, so now that the crank pattern is cleared, we can do the relearn. Let's see if it makes us turn the car off. All right, so the test conditions, we should be basically 0 miles per hour in park, ship position in park. Your engine coolant should be above 167 Fahrenheit or 75 degrees Celsius. And right underneath it, it shows us what it is. And your transmission fluid temperatures need to be 113 Fahrenheit and 45 Celsius. All right, so let's click enter. So I'm gonna cut the key off, but leave the ignition on. Okay, now it says to start the engine. Depress the accelerator fully until the engine goes into fuel cut. There we go. And you can hear it. Okay. It said release the accelerator pedal completely. Turn the switch off. I like how this does step by step. Turn switch off. Turn switch on. Start engine. Wait 30 seconds. Crank pattern relearning has completed. So F3. All right, so let's turn this off and let's see what we got. It kind of hesitated while cranking, so that's a good thing. It basically tells you that your crank, something happened to it. That's why it did a little hesitation on your first time cranking it back up. So now I'm gonna try to delete these codes and see if this check engine light goes away. All right, so I cleared the codes, and let's see. So far, I'm gonna take this for a drive. Normally, when we drive this, it doesn't go over like 20 miles per hour. So I'm gonna take this for a drive and see how it goes. But so far, so good. The check engine light is off. It's not blinking. So far, so good. All right, so success. I am driving the vehicle and it's going definitely more than 20 miles per hour now. I have no problem accelerating. It's back to being a regular Honda Accord, zipping around. I'm not gonna try to go too fast because I'm in a neighborhood, but so yeah, basically this thing, this NT510 did the job. I was able to reset this code with no problem. I was able to reset and reprogram the sensor, the crank sensor with no problem. So, yep, so far so good. So I'll be calling the owner of the vehicle, letting them know they can come pick this up. It's all fixed, and they saved a lot of money from having to go to the dealership or some major car shop. So that's pretty much it. The car's running really, really good. I started it up a couple more times, let it run, took it around a couple more times. The only thing I didn't do was take it on the highway, but I mean, it's not necessary. This thing is running. This thing's working good. It's back to normal, and it's all thanks to the scan tool I bought, and it was able to go through those steps really easily, and everything is all fixed.